as I'm sure you're aware too, they always bring up rape and incest, but it's usually a red herring because that's like what 1% or something of like, it's
Yes.
like they they always bring that up like, well, what about this? It's like, yeah, that exists, but it's like 1%. It's like I think it's like 98% of abortions are elective. I was talking to a friend too about the later term abortions, and he we were saying how it was less than 1% are later term. Now, I'd have to look more into this. He was saying that he believes that the reason certain women do it later is if there's complications where the mother's life is in danger. And like that, I'm a bit more sympathetic to because it's either, okay, they both die or you save one life. I get that. But the people who are like bragging about getting an abortion like later, like late in, like that just sickens me. Yeah. Oh, Silas, your audio's out.
Part of why I'm saying that it's going to end up like this is I've actually looked into some of the data, looked into some of the research. We talked about who thinks it's actually a primary thing that they're going to vote on, 6% of the population. Now you look at that 6% of the population, there's another fallacy that the Democrats seem to say, at least the regressives, a lot of these activist type people say, oh, it's a women's right to choose. Only women should speak about this. But hey, Amy Coney Barrett, for example, she's a woman and she's very strong towards protecting the life of the preborn people. Who do you think would actually care more? There's this idea that it's like, oh, it's just women who are completely pro-choice and they're the ones who want this. Like a certain group of women might, but the
Yeah.
people who seem to poll and say they care about this more than anything seems to be more left-leaning men. And when you actually look at this, it kind of makes actual sense, like why certain men would want the ability to have women have lower standards to actually accept people to have intercourse with them or to have the out of like, oh, I can sleep with this woman and then she'll be able to like get rid of the result of me sleeping with her or without me having to have the responsibility to this person. So there's a certain sort of man that actually holds that to be a big thing. But then on the inverse, the people who you find to be most strong towards pro-life, towards protecting that life, are the women who are actually very proud and protective of motherhood and understand how valuable and amazing that process of actually growing a life into you. So they value that and they want to protect them in that kind of way. So if you actually look at the statistics, and this is an excerpt from an article, Trump was wrong on abortion, says Patrick Basham, this was in the Express, says the old adage that abortion would be legal everywhere and unrestricted if men were at risk of becoming pregnant always presumed men were the problem for the pro-choice side. If it ever was true in America, it certainly is not true today. Women are a majority of those holding pro life views, while men constitute the majority of those of pro choice views. Ironically, and perhaps counterintuitively, it is male, not female voters who would be responsible for an hypothetical electoral blowback against Republican candidates. And if you've been paying even a little attention to politics over the last decade, I don't think you can really be survived about these demographics. You just think about the kind of man we're thinking about here, and also the kind of conservative, more right-leaning, like proud to be in her femininity woman, like that the feminists and the people on the left mock, like, oh, these little girls want to be a mom. That whole trope is there. There's some little girls who want to be a mom since they're kids. You think that kid will be growing up and thinking, I want to be able to end the thing that I've been wishing for since I was a kid? No, they're very proud about that. So it made sense to me. This is the same thing with actual abortion. When you actually look into the details, and this is part of why I'm thinking it's going to even out. When you look into the actual details, when you start talking about the actual topics, in general, if you're alive right now, you are pro-life. If you're not literally killing yourself as you're listening to this, you are pro-life instinctively, inherently. So I think eventually most people will start coming towards that end, and most people are already on that end. It's just this particular situation. Even the pro-choice people, part of the reason that, again, I'm still supportive of them is because they're just blocking and their focus is the life of the woman with no exception for the life that's growing. And that's the thing. Even that's why they won't even admit that it is a life, because once you start comparing, that becomes more dicey for them. That shows me that they still have ethics, they still have a level of morality, but they might have other restrictions, similar restrictions that I had mentally in my mind like a few decades back, like a decade ago, to this topic. Not even a decade ago. Like, it was in short that might discuss that further on. But yeah. Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay.